estate. Can mom and dad bail out the economy? This episode was brought to you by listeners and viewers like you. I don't have a way for you to give me any money. There's no Patreon or anything. So instead of doing that, all I'm asking for you to do is to share the show. Send it to somebody in real estate, somebody that's a real estate professional. It could be a lender, title company, real estate agent, investor that you know that you think would benefit about hearing some of this real estate news. And there's several different ways to listen. One is hopefully right now, we're broadcasting live on YouTube. And I'm not totally sure because Restream has been acting weird. Last week, Clubhouse was acting weird. So hopefully we're broadcasting everywhere. But you can also catch us on the podcast. That's where most people listen, is through the recorded version of the show. And that's uploaded this afternoon. So the same day we record, we edit and get it out there as fast as possible. But we're going to cover a ton of news headlines, including all the lawsuits. We're going to be talking about inflation and the promising inflation report, mortgage rates, and there may be a way that mom and dad are helping to bail out home buyers. And you can join the conversation if you're watching live on YouTube. You could comment. I could display your comment. Hey, look, Melissa Marr, she said she found it. I don't know where it is. I gotta go find my own show now. Olivier is also there. And you can join Clubhouse. And if you're in Clubhouse, you can actually join the conversation and add your voice to the podcast itself. So thank you, everybody, for joining. The whole reason I do this show is so people can have one place to go to find a succinct professional analysis of exactly what's happening in the news beyond the headlines, so that you don't have to go to like 50, 60 different resources like I do. I should say it's somewhat professional. Maybe it's like a little bit irreverent, but also somewhat professional as well. So I have a friend that was like, hey, where is your show? And, oh, there's the link. Now it says view on YouTube. So for whatever reason, oh no, it's still not there. Now I have to double click. All right. So that's going to be annoying for those of you in Clubhouse who are hearing me echo. So that's interesting. So it's only showing the view on YouTube, view on Facebook, it's only showing that link now in Restream once you're actually streaming. So before you stream, that link does not exist. So, but I had a friend that was like, where's your show? Send it to me so I can watch it. So now I'm going to send it to her. All right. Well, thank you guys again for tuning in. Let's get right into it. The first thing we're going to talk about is NAR's response. They had the next conference, NXT. And at that next conference, Inman had the coverage and that said that NAR will argue for a complete reversal of the Sitzer Burnett verdict. National Association of Realtors legal team on Monday blamed the ruling on the judge. The plaintiff's attorney, meanwhile, said that NAR hadn't learned anything from its resounding defeat. Okay, so this is what I want to know from all of you who are currently listening. Was it a resounding defeat? Is there something that the jury missed? Is there something that the judge did that made us lose? Because that's pretty much what they're claiming. So the legal team, let's see, Tracy Casper, she spoke first, saying that it was a really tough verdict. The Sitzer Burnett case. Let me go to what they said. This is the epitome of grace under fire. You remember that old show, Grace Under Fire? Man, I haven't thought about that show since I watched it last, which was a long time ago. When was that on? It was on for 5 seasons. Brett Butler. Huh. Interesting. Because the plaintiff, anyway, it's a close name, Burnett. All right, this is the epitome of grace under fire. This is the epitome of experts that we have in our house. Those watching out for all of us these years, they've worked tirelessly for us. They say that it was critical to understanding the jury's verdict, that basically they're saying that there is no way a jury could have found, based on the evidence, this verdict. And that is one of their claims for an appeal. They say that there's a per se rule analysis rather than a rule of reason analysis, and that a per se analysis is looser. So while rule of reason allows a jury to consider a practice's actual effect on the market or intentions of the people who engaged in the practice, a per se violation is illegal regardless of those considerations. So what they're saying is the part of their argument is if there was price fixing, then the rule of reason says it's better for the market. because the per se rule says no matter if it was better for buyers or better for the clients in the end, if there is price fixing, it's illegal. So according to the jury instructions in the Sitzer Burnett case, told the juries that if you find any defendant engaged in price fixing conspiracy, it's not a defense that such a defendant acted with good motives. Though the thought its conduct was legal, or that the conduct may have some good results. So that's a per se analysis is what they're using. So they say they have a very strong basis for a complete reversal. NAR will appeal the decision. The wheels of justice do not move quickly, and it will take time. They believe they have a very strong basis based on the jury's verdict, as well as the damages awarded. We anticipate that the next coming months we will file post-trial motions. NAR will look at the court and basically undo the jury's verdict. So the Michael Ketchmark of Ketchmark and McCrate, who gets like 30% of this huge settlement. I think it's 30%. He said the National Association of Realtors doesn't seem like it's learned anything from the jury verdict. We keep hearing the same arguments being retreaded and rehashed. All they're going to do is waste time and money pursuing an outdated, broken, illegal system. They're trying to act like they didn't really lose and they had a resounding defeat. Oh, they call it willfulness and arrogance. That's what he's saying. So is there grounds for an appeal? So far, the grounds for the appeal that they were talking about, I don't see that anyone has said there wasn't evidence that they didn't allow in. And I haven't seen any other argument than any other jury wouldn't have come to this decision based on the evidence. And that if it's not appealed, if it's the ruling is not changed on appeal, they're going to go to the 8th Circuit. Was Sirhan put in the lawsuit? Oh yeah, the one in New York with Rebney. I can't remember what the acronym is. Yes, there was one last week. I think we kind of hit on that last week, but yes. Mike V, he's joining us on Clubhouse and on YouTube. Olivier says no pressure, huh? Complete reversal. Telling the jury you're not smart enough and you were wrong, that's always a winning way. Yeah, I mean, I guess what they're saying is based on the jury instructions that were given, if those jury instructions had been correct, then a jury couldn't have found the same decision. He said that decision is a critical issue in understanding the jury's verdict was the per se analysis versus the rule of reason analysis.
I think if the plaintiffs would have aired like 2 or 3 episodes of $1 Million Listing Los Angeles or New York, when they showed the commissions for that transaction and it's like $500,000, that would have pretty much, that's all they had to do.
That's all that. I think you mean that's all the plaintiffs had to do to win?
Yeah, exactly. Because just think of the feelings of the jurors, like, well, they don't deserve that, and then boom, that's it.
And plus, if the jurors are being this is kind of my argument about how the plaintiffs couch the argument versus NAR not being able to defend this at all. Basically, they're saying, hey guys, who wants to vote for free food? If you want to vote for free food, you need to pass this, right? That's basically what you're saying. If you ask a whole bunch of people about any product, is it overpriced? The vast majority of people are going to say, yes, it's overpriced, with hopes that one day it will be priced less because of their answer on that survey. And I think you could easily equate that to what's happening in this jury verdict, to where you're saying, hey guys, do you want to be able to buy a house for cheaper because they're artificially inflated prices right now? Then vote. and then we'll get rid of this other commission structure and it'll all be cheaper. And if that's what they've been told, I think most people are going to be like, yeah, I mean, we want it cheaper. Yeah, it's been, they weren't able to defend and prove that, without this rule or without this clear cooperation policy, they weren't able to prove that it would have been cheaper any other way. So I think NAR has to get serious about the legal strategy and explaining it to a juror, just like a real estate agent would explain this to someone sitting across the table from them looking to list their property. And I also don't know, this may be dumb. Is Ryan Bokros? Yeah, Ryan's here. Ryan, you know a lot of policy stuff, NAR stuff. What's wrong with a real estate agent not wanting to show a property because they're not paying anything? Why is that wrong or bad to say? In any other industry, you you could incentivize someone to purchase a product or do that because you make more money with it, right? If you go to Best Buy, there's products throughout the store that have been incentivized, and they will push those products because they get a little bit of commission. So why can't you say that as a real estate agent? I'm not understanding this argument of, well, don't say that some agents aren't going to show your property if you don't offer a commission. But that's the truth of it. There's some buyers that aren't going to want to see that property if you don't offer to pay their agent fee. And there's some agents that will be instructed not to do it. Somebody, go ahead, Mike.
So I think.
Oh,
I
that's
think
sorry.
the
You.
interesting
That's
thing
your.
about-
This is Ryan Bokeros. Everybody, go ahead, Ryan.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. No, I think originally it goes back to, and I think if you want to, really dig into that, it's not even so much a policy as much as it is an ethics, right? Because that is in our code of ethics. It goes back to redlining and steering, right? If this one particular house or part of town seems to offer, 10% more commission because whatever reason, then as the agent, instead of going for the best fiduciary, using our fiduciary responsibilities and perhaps giving our client the best service from the standpoint of what's best for them, you're looking at the commission and saying, yeah, but I can make 10% more if I steer them this way and go look at this part of town or this particular house. So I think the idea and the mindset is from an ethics standpoint of somehow or another we have to separate the idea of the real estate agent leaning into the consumer to purchase in a certain area because of their personal best interest of the amount of commission.
That's interesting. So the agency relationship is what you're saying is the defining characteristic between being able to tell someone, hey, let's go look at this one. They're offering more commission. If it's that agency relationship / fiduciary duty, then shouldn't there be something done in situations where someone's saying, well, we're not going to pay you anything? It seems like there's a duty to the client then to say this would be on you if we went and saw this one. Because if you just ignore that and pop that at the end, it's going to be huge.
Yeah, I mean, from a legal standpoint, you make a point, right? And so I think that when you have to make that determination at the point of agency, right? At the point of deciding if this is a client that I'm willing to work with, period. Before it gets to the point of showing you this house versus this house because one has commission attached to it and the other doesn't, or the commission amounts are different. That's when you have a standpoint of we've got to come to an agreement that you're going to pay me to be your agent, period, before we get to the point of saying, now, what's the amount? And is it going to be based on whether or not the seller's offering that, or if you as the buyer are coming out of pocket for that?
Yeah, and I guess just the language changes because for years, they even showed scripts and stuff that Keller was using to say, so there are some agents out there that will not show your house. And I've shown, I'm, saying all this to kind of be devil's advocate, but I've shown and sold a property and not been paid at all. I've closed on the deal and didn't make a dime. So I know what that's like. But I guess the language changes from there are some agents that won't show your property if you're not offering to pay a buyer agent fee, because that's what has been said in scripts and stuff in the past, like the Gary Keller scripts that they were using and that the plaintiff was using for their court case. That script then changes to, well, there are some buyers that won't come see your house if you don't offer to pay their agent's compensation. And it's going to be the buyer's choice, but that also needs to be made public and and put somewhere so that everyone knows that this seller is offering zero compensation for that buyer agent fee. So if someone does have a buyer agent fee, they could calculate that stuff up front on the Zillow.
From a seller standpoint, you're limiting your buyer pool because it could impact the affordability of a property for a buyer for qualifying. We were talking to our mortgage broker about it the other day, and her eyes were just swimming in her head that the bankers really don't know how to figure this out. But what I can't figure out is why does the compensation matter if we can properly explain it and disclose it through buyer and seller agreements that we put together with our clients?
I guess they're the states that this is happening most often. Maybe those states that don't have it clearly explained in the contracts. I know that our state has it pretty clearly explained in our contracts, and we haven't been sued yet, knock on wood. But who's to say that that's not going to happen in the future? Especially based on this most recent lawsuit that we'll get into next.
And Ray, from my understanding, that is also one of the rebuttals that NAR is going to have, is that verbiage is very clearly stated in Missouri's promulgated forms and in their contract. And so from my understanding, this is going to be one of their arguments for appeal as well, that wasn't allowed to be brought up because of per se, that it's very clearly stated in buyer rep agreements in the state of Missouri. So now, that doesn't mean that copycat lawsuits in other states that don't have very good verbiage, we do here in Texas, interestingly enough, as well, despite the new lawsuits that have been dropped here. But that verbiage is in the document in Missouri. And so from my understanding, that is another angle that NAR has to go with it to appeal.
Yeah, interesting. I'm going to share part of this article on Inman that says advice for real estate agents. So this is at the very bottom of the article. It says, in the meantime, Johnson reiterated that she's been given many times over the years that realtors should use a buyer representation agreement to promote their value proposition. So maybe these folks that are suing didn't have a buyer representation agreement. Maybe that's it. We do. It's very clearly spelled out in our buyer agency agreement and the listing agreement. She pointed attendees to competition.realtor and realestatecommissionfacts.com for more information, talking points about the lawsuits, challenging U.S. commission structure. Lee told their attendees to explain to clients how we get paid and why. They also advised attendees and stressed commissions are negotiable. In that vein, she urged NAR members to leave compensation fields blank on forms rather than pre-filling them out. A phenomenon multiple plaintiffs emphasized in their testimony during the Sitzer Burnett trial. Those are conversations you need to have with the consumer. Quote, there's no set amount. Let's see. A realtor should never suggest to a seller that if they don't make a certain amount of offer to compensation, the other realtors will steer the buyers away from their property. And an opportunity to improve practices, opportunity to think creatively, differentiate yourselves from the competition.
I can tell you that in Massachusetts, it's very rare to find an agent that has a buyer agreement, yet we're a Connecticut-based company, and almost all of the agents in Connecticut have buyer agreements.
Yeah, I started requiring buyer agency agreements years ago. And so every one of my clients has a buyer agency agreement. Now, sometimes it's an open agreement, which allows them to use another agent, but that's super rare. That's usually in the case of like an institutional investor coming into town. And they want to buy 100 properties and they're talking to, a whole bunch of people. Like, well, if you want to see anything from us, you're signing some kind of agency representation agreement. So that's how we operate. But most everybody we have signs an exclusive agreement, meaning they're only going to work with us. And they agree to an amount of compensation, and then they give us permission to accept partial or complete payment of that commission from the seller or the listing firm. So it still puts them in charge of the commission, even though that they're giving me permission to accept it from somewhere else. I have to get the permission from them. So my fiduciary duty is still to them, which
So
I
an
think it's
open
brilliantly
agreement
written.
only. So an open agreement only covers that you get your whole compensation.
Yeah, it's actually kind
Whether
of dangerous for
all
the
from the
consumer.
buyer or whether it's split.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I could put in there's a checkbox in there that says I'll just take whatever the seller gives me, but it's actually kind of dangerous for the consumer, because it also means that anyone that they've signed that form with can invoice them whenever they close. So even if they didn't quite use the agent to close on a deal, it means a non-exclusive. That means it can sign up with a whole bunch of different agents, but it also means that a whole bunch of different agents can invoice them whenever they close on their property. So yeah, it's kind of depends on how you read it. All right, so let's go to the new bombshell lawsuit. This came out yesterday, and let me see. I have a friend of mine that wishes not to be named. Said, "Hey, this just happened in my state," and he sent it to me, or she sent it to me. So a good friend of mine from Texas sent me this. Let's see, there it is. All right, so this is the actual filing, and so I read through it. It's basically the QJ Team LLC and 5 Points Holding LLC. So two companies individually on behalf of other persons similarly situated are suing, and here's the list: Texas Association of Realtors, Austin Board of Realtors, San Antonio Board of Realtors, Metro Texas Association of Realtors, Houston Association of Realtors, ABA Management, Penfield Realty, Ebby Holiday, the Dave Perry Miller Company, Keller Williams, Heil Group, Loken Group, Hexagon Group, DMTX, actually it says Keller Willis, San Antonio. Is that a typo, or is it actually Keller Willis in San Antonio? And actually San Antonio, oh yeah, that's right. Legacy Group, Fathom Realty, Grace Realty Group, Side. This is the first time I've seen Side in one of these, I think. City Quest Home Services, JP Pinicky, Team Burns, ABRE Capital, Realty Austin, ATXWIR, the Michael Group, Square MB, Mark Anthony Dimas, DIMAS, and then Greenwood King and Turner Magnum. So I know that was a lot of words. Some of these are DBAing as different companies. So I thought it was interesting when you go into the section that defines each plaintiff and defendant, section 20 something here. Are the plaintiffs is a QJ Team, limited liability, organized under the state laws of Texas, sold real property commonly described, and there's the property that it sold. And Hexagon Group, which is Keller Williams Central, that's the DBA. The buyer's broker whom QJ paid a 3% commission to was Square MB, which is Magnolia Realty. Isn't that Chip and JoJo's company? You guys can't really see. I guess you can. It may be small on the screen there.
So these two companies that brought the suit are actually builders in Texas.
They're builders. Interesting.
Yeah.
Plaintiff 5 Points Holding, which is FPH. They sold real property and used the Michael Group as a listing broker. The buyer's broker paid 3% to Keller Williams Urban Dallas. So based on those two transactions, they're now bringing a lawsuit that they want to be class action against TAR, ABOR, all those previously named, Metro Tex, HAR, San Antonio Board of Realtors. I mean, there's a lot. So it was just based on those two deals. You guys can read the rest of it. Where did this come from? I don't know. I got the PDF, so I'm not sure like their origin. Actually, it's case 4:23-CV-01013. So there you go. Look it up. Any of you comments from the Texans on the call? Is this one of those Money grabs? Does this have legs based on the Texas contracts? What do you think? I want to know.
I'm not dug into it enough to really know, but this is something that I predicted, where most of those names that aren't brokerages or associations are extremely large teams. Mark Demas was actually the only, from my understanding, the only listing broker in Texas for Zillow, especially here in Houston. He may not have been in other cities, but from my understanding, he was the exclusive listing agent for Zillow. And so and most of those large teams are extremely tight. And I know this isn't exclusive to here, but it's always the big teams that get the builder deals, right? And list properties for builders. So this is not particularly surprising. The associations being in on it. I'm surprised they didn't actually name the MLSs because of the way that the MLS structure is in all of those associations. All of those associations own the MLS, own their respected MLS. And it's an interesting, what's the word I'm looking for? The relationship between builders and the MLSs across the state of Texas, at least in the big cities, has always been a very interesting one from the standpoint of some builders will open a brokerage or at least a paper brokerage so that they can list properties, or again, hire these really big teams to essentially pay them nothing with the promise of paying the buyer side to list the property. So I'm not surprised to see something like this. I'm surprised that it came from a builder. The first part coming from a builder and not, another class action consumer type of suit. So I wouldn't necessarily say that this is a copycat suit just based on the merits of what this builder is claiming. And if you read Sitzer, it's not necessarily a copycat suit, but I can imagine them using bits and pieces of that judgment as part of their argument.
Yeah, it's almost like now that there's a precedent set, these are going to start popping up everywhere. I'm reading the Inman article now. They point out that it was a home builder, like you said. They also said that they did mention in the lawsuit the NAR and the local MLSs and the variations stifle competition and inflate costs to consumers. The conspiracy also allegedly forces sellers to pay for services in a competitive market. I feel like it would be pretty easy to look up some cases that my friends have told me about in Texas where builders refuse to pay real estate agent commissions. Wasn't, and maybe over my skis a bit, but wasn't Lennar or DR Horton, didn't they build a whole bunch of homes in Texas? And especially during the pandy, they were refusing to pay real estate agent buyer fees. I remember a lot of agents talking about that.
Lennar was the big one. Perry Homes and Pulte were kind of in on all of that as well.
So it's, it seems like that would be easy to say, well, no, you don't. Here's an example.
Yeah. Yep.
Doesn't that kill the conspiracy?
It feels like it. Doesn't it? I mean, it feels like it. I think that if you're looking at it from the, are you looking at it from the listing side or from the buyer side, I guess is kind of that question. And so specifically with this builder, they're saying, hey, we were conspired against from the other side as far as trying to sell our homes as the principal. And, essentially feeling like we had to list and we had to pay a certain amount in order for the real estate industry, in air quotes, to play in the game.
I thought the verbiage was interesting in the lawsuit. It said that that when it was talking about the money or it's the specific court cases for the plaintiffs, it said at whom, the buyer's broker whom FPH paid a 3% commission to was Keller Williams. Then on the other one, QJ used Hexagon Group as listing broker, the buyer's broker whom QJ paid a 3% commission to was Square, which is Magnolia Realty. I think that's an interesting verbiage because in Arkansas, that could be what they put in the lawsuit, but that would be the number one argument, is that the buyer's broker whom QJ paid, you would say, no. The buyer's broker whom Ray, the listing agent, paid a 3% commission to was so-and-so. And because in our state, if there's no, I think there's a couple of dangers out there. One of the dangers is if you're in a state that has a clause in your contract that says, if there is no other real estate agent, I'll reduce my fee to X. You're basically admitting all these court cases. I feel like that, and I'm not an attorney, whatever, but I feel like if that's in your contract, you're basically admitting that if there was not another person in this deal, if there's no other side here, I'm going to reduce my fee. So you pay less if there's not a buyer agent involved. You're basically you admitted it. So in Arkansas, we don't have that box. And if there is no other buyer agent, I just keep all of it because they're paying me the commission. And then I will give a portion of my commission to the other side. And I don't understand how, if it's like that in other states, that this would be a case, because I'm the one splitting what the seller is paying me. And we get verification of that. We say, here's how we're going to split it. Are you good with that? And they say, yes, no, change it, whatever. And I've had some sellers that want to put a little more on the buyer's side. I've had some sellers that want to put less on the buyer's side. That have specifically said, no, we want you to market our property more. We want you to buy some more ads and stuff. So can we give you a little more? Like, yeah, you can. But that's what we use it for, is the marketing. So I think, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a legal expert, but I think if the contracts have that in there, you're in danger. Or if that's your general policy, you're in danger. And I'm not sure if the Texas contracts have that box in there. If it doesn't, then I would say and the listing agent or the seller is paying the listing broker, and then the listing broker is deciding to split their fee. I just think these wouldn't even make it to court. But what do I know? Rebecca said, does it sound like a money grab? Yeah, for sure. Isn't Texas the state where you have these people that go get copyrights on stuff and then sue? For a long time, like, people would drag people to court in Texas and they would sue them because they would get like a copyright on something or make a patent claim on some kind of product. There was a name for them, patent troll. Is that what it is? I can't remember. Drop it in the comments.
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. Patent trolls. Texas is a state rich with patent trolls, if I remember right.
Yes, they specifically went after real estate brokerages as well for certain elements of
the website,
IDX website.
Yeah, the
IDX
search
website.
bar or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, nuts.
Yep.
I guess they lost that because you guys still have IDX websites. All right, so
it became a fair claim, open code type of
fair use. Yeah, search bars have been around a long time. I remember building a website. I used to have a website called Go For Stuff. This is, we all look back and we think about the mistakes we made. I should have sold this, but I had this search engine back in the day called Go For Stuff. And it was a little gopher like cartoon that I made for the mascot. It's kind of like a Lycos, but it was before all that. And people could go there and they could buy stuff, and I would make affiliate fees off of that stuff. I was an early affiliate to some of these big affiliate networks. So you could go there and like search candles and buy candles. That was back in the day, man. I went to college. I just let it fall off the face of the earth. It didn't renew anything. I should have sold it. But what do I know now? Speaking of selling stuff, cooler monthly inflation report pushes mortgage rates even lower. Ooh, inflation is starting to cool a little bit, y'all. The average rate on a 30-year fixed fell 18 basis points to 17.4 on Tuesday, according to Mortgage News Daily. The drop was due to a sharp bond market rally after the government's monthly inflation report came in lower than analysis had predicted. Bond yields fell, so too did mortgage rates, which loosely followed the yield in the 10-year Treasury. 30-year fixed rate mortgage jumped over 8%. October 19th was the highest level in more than 2 decades. Then it fell more than 25 basis points for the first week of November. A quote from Mortgage News Daily officer Matthew Graham said, even though today's inflation data was extremely important in shaping the rate narrative, the bond market's reaction is nonetheless impressive. Mortgage lenders have done a great job of keeping pace with the current market, considering mortgage rates are often focused on taking the elevator up and the stairs down. That's an interesting phrase. I like that phrase. Okay, so better than expected inflation numbers. The Redfin also, let me see if they have a chart. Nope, no chart on Redfin. It's the same story. Never mind. Redfin also has a report. Investors. Are any of you working with a ton of investors? If you're in the Sunbelt or the pre-pandy pop areas, or it's the post-pandy pops, those areas around the country that really just kind of took off, especially for investment, right after the pandemic. If you're in one of those areas, you probably saw a pullback from investors. Now, earlier in the year, there was like a 40% pullback from investors nationwide, but currently we're seeing investor purchases falling 30% year over year to the third lowest quarter in 7 years, as rising mortgage rates, high home prices, lackluster rental market made investing less attractive. We talked about the lackluster rental market last week. So according to Redfin analysis of county records across 39 of the most populous U.S. metropolitan areas, the national figures in this report represent an aggregation of those metros. We define investor as any institution or business that is purchasing real estate. We refer to a record. Oh, that's just what they're doing in the data. Investors are very quiet in Phoenix. Quote from Redfin Premier real estate agent Heather Mahmoud Corley. If I get an investor client these days, it's usually mom and pop ones. The bigger investors who used to come in and buy 5 or 10 homes at a time, you don't see that anymore. The money we're getting from hedge funds has dried up. Rents are down. And demand for housing in general has slowed because more people are staying put. That's got a pretty good chart here. Year-over-year growth of investor purchases. I feel like they just kind of got their fill, right? There's so many investors buying at a time that, now they're kind of done for a bit. So there it is. You see the gigantic growth, and then it started to trickle down, and now it's below 30%. You can see the previous pullback that I was referring to. Investors bought $36 billion worth of homes. That's down 20% year over year. Investors purchased $36 billion worth of homes in third quarter, down 19.5%. Typical home purchase and investor purchase was $475,000, slightly up from the $449,000. They're not buying that big in our area. In our area, $500,000 is like luxury. So if you're buying like a $500,000 house here, you got to get a pretty nice rent rate. National investor market share is at 16% currently. And again, you can see the spike. You can also see this trend, this constant trend over the years. The trend line has gone up where investors are purchasing more and more properties, but you see a pretty consistent spike and then down, spike and then down, spike and then down. And then what's happened since 2020 is that those moves have been a lot bigger. So we had the down was a lot bigger and the spike up has been a lot bigger. But it stopped about halfway point for the audio listeners from the most recent down and up since 2020. It's about at that halfway point at the 16% number. Typical investor sells a home for 61% more than what they bought it for. That's interesting. All right. Any of you working with investors now? Are you guys seeing this? We were working in 2000 and I guess that was last year, 2022. We saw a huge influx of investors into our area. That continued probably until February of this year. We're still seeing an influx, but just like that Redfin person said, we're seeing a lot more mom and pops. We're not seeing as many people willing to buy 100 homes. The problem with the people that were willing to buy 100 homes in our market is that we would send them a couple of homes, they'd buy them, then we'd send them a couple more that hit about the same rent rates, and they got shy all of a sudden. They were like, I don't know about that one. I'd want to offer half price on that one. It's like, whoa. They were just changing their investment criteria after they have really nice, good investment that is making money for them. And I'm not sure what caused that. I guess it was the uptick in interest rates if they're sensitive to that. But it was a definite it's been a definite change in tune from, hey, we want to buy 100 homes to, hey, yeah, maybe I don't really like any of these that you're sending. Like, well, you were liking all of them. But we still get a lot of people that are reaching out. For some reason, people are like, I want to invest in Columbus, Ohio. I want to invest in Birmingham, Alabama, and Little Rock, Arkansas. That's the call we get all the time. I'm like, okay, there's some kind of blog post or somebody out there telling people. And we do have a really friendly, landlord-friendly environment. We can get good rates, but everyone and their dog wants the 1% rate right now, and that is hard to find. So if you're in a market in which you can get the 1% rule pretty readily, that means if you were to buy a home for $100,000, you rent it for $1,000 a month. And at that price, it would cash flow, cover taxes, insurance, and et cetera. Then let me know, because I have some people to send you who are looking for 1% in our market and can't find it right now. Only certain situations. Actually, you can. Like, we can find 20% a year, but most people don't want to buy those homes in those areas with those tenants. That's what we hear over and over and over. Well, I don't want to buy that home. It's like, all right, well, let's see. Here's good news for buyers. 1/3 of home sellers are giving concessions to home buyers. Yeah. Concessions are back. Jack, are you excited? I'm excited. This feels like finally we're returning to normal. Yes, thank you, Clubhouse. Thank you for expressing the joy that we're all really feeling. I mean, we're becoming more normal. I can remember in 2018, some in 2017, hearing my friends around the country in major metros start talking about multiple offers and, well, it's never been this way. I just listed a property and this weekend we got 26 offers. It's crazy. And about 2018, 2019, we were getting like 2 offers on a property after it had been listed like 2 or 3 weeks. And I was like, whoa, multiple offers. This is exciting. And then 2020 came and it was like 20 offers on every property. It was crazy. Well, I'm really excited to be returning to a time that is definitely more skills based, where you can't just put a sign in the yard and sell it, but you actually have to do something. So we always tell our clients that a home sells for 4 reasons: price, condition, location, and then the professional presentation of your property to the marketplace. And then we show them all the ways in which we handle that 4th one. And then we say, we're not going to move your home today, so we're not going to do much about the location except to highlight it. So all that's left is price and condition. So we're going to put it on the market for this price. We look at the other homes that are currently listed and say, based on the condition of those other homes and their price, how do we compete? And we compare price and condition. Then once we kind of zero it in on a price, we put it on the market. And then we listen. When the market shows your property, you don't have any offers, maybe you're getting a lot of showings, then you might be priced near right, but maybe not at that condition. So you either have to upgrade or edit the condition, or you have to adjust the price. It's a very simple way of looking at it. But as a real estate agent, you have to take number 4 off the table. If you can't take the professional presentation of that property to the marketplace, if you can't show them the numbers, if you can't say, here, we exposed your property to 150,000 people. Here, we exposed your property this way to 30,000 people. And this one went to 20,000. If you can't show what you're doing to expose the property to the buyers, then in a skills-based economy like we're in, you're not going to make it. So get really, really good at that last part. I think you're going to do phenomenal in this market. And you can be excited when you see a return to normal. When now I have an advantage and people that list with me have an advantage, because we're going to give them a competitive advantage in the marketplace against all these other listings. That's our competition. It's not the agents. It's the listings. Those listings are our competition. I've got to get my listing way more attention than those other listings. One way people are doing that is through concessions. 30% of sellers are offering some kind of concessions. Now, I think what's happening is you still have sellers that are listing a property at an aspirational sales price. They're like, I think, it should probably list here, but we really want to list it here. Let's list it here. And then instead of dropping the price, they're saying, you know what, while we're listed here, why don't we offer some closing costs? Why don't we offer to do this or that thing? Why don't we, well, my phone just rang. sorry. Why don't we offer some closing costs? Why don't we offer to do something for the buyer, give them some kind of concession to see if they will come up to that price? Builders are doing the same thing right now. Builders don't want to drop their price because if they start dropping their price and it sells for less than the other homes that just sold, then they're in trouble with the neighborhood. So they definitely don't want to do that. They would much rather put a fridge and a fence in, even though fences are like kind of passe right now with the wood supply. But still, they would rather put a fridge and a fence in than to lower their price because what it could mean moving forward for them as far as comparables go. So I think that's what you're seeing is that people are still listing at that aspirational sales price, but they're willing to give some concessions at that sales price. So it wouldn't surprise me if more people started to list, but instead of going for the aspirational sales price, they started to list where it should sell. And there are fewer concessions in those situations. And there are multiple offers in those situations. When a home is priced right, it looks right, it's marketed well, then I think you're going to still have multiple offers because you have a very desirable property and you have buyers that are sensitive to that condition because they don't want to come out of pocket with a bunch of money. So that's what we have moving forward. All right. And right on cue, the best time to buy. Y'all remember I had that little viral clip that went out when I was talking about Barbara Corcoran saying that now's a really good time to buy because if you wait until mortgage rates drop, then prices are going to go up again because you're going to have a huge influx of buyers into the economy. Well, Redfin says that the best time to buy since mid-September as mortgage rates fall and sellers drop prices is right now. Mortgage rates are falling quickly, dropping from a 2-decade high of 8% to 7.4% in the last 3 weeks. A series of macroeconomic events led to indicators bringing rates down. The Fed decided against another rate hike, which he said there were going to be 2. There's only been 1 since then. I wonder if he's going to make that one still happen towards the end of the year. I don't know. Treasury announced plans to issue less long-term debt than expected, and the job market is growing slower than expected. So buyers could lock in a mortgage rate now that is lower than it was 3 or 4 weeks ago. Let's see. Redfin economists recommend that a serious home buyer consider looking at a mortgage right now, while average rates sit at their lowest level since mid-September. That's because rates could continue their downward trend. It's also possible they will increase. I've heard some economists talking about a decrease in interest rates towards the first quarter of 2024. And I've heard other economists saying that interest rates are just going to stay higher for longer. It's still going to be elevated over 7%. Some said 7.5%, but right now it's 7.4. So we'll see if it stays over 7.
Hey Ray, can I chime in on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so actually, on the last FOMC, meeting, which I believe was last week, actually the chairman did announce. I mean, he made it a point that they're trending their rate to 2%, which is currently at 5.25 to 5.5. I think it's 5.5 right now, but that they're working towards 2% literally by 2025.
So I guess they will be cutting rates then. But it's still trending that way. Even like somebody said that the economy is doing the dirty work for the Fed right now. So,
even though, and I apologize, I meant to say, and even though the Fed fund rate is not the 10-year, the 10-year bond, the Fed funds rate is a leading indicator of what the, of what the bond will do, the 10-year, which then that determines the 30-year mortgages. So I think, by 2025, we're going to be going down.
Hopefully by 2025, but what's going to happen in 2024?
UBS just came out with a prediction that the Fed would do multiple rate drops next year.
Interesting. That would be great. I think that would help a lot of people, but I mean, that could also get out of hand and inflation could just escalate again. If they do multiple rate drops next year.
The Fed follows the 2-year Treasury rate. So that's kind of where they want the Fed funds to be. And if they do end up dropping, it's going to be because unemployment is going to be going up, or there's going to be not increased, but a decrease in consumer spending, more signs of recession. That's when they'll start loosening things up.
Which they may be looking at this year's holiday shopping as an indicator of what could be happening too, because whenever people tighten that or put more of their holiday shopping on debt, that's in general not great for the economy. So I wonder if they would either keep it higher for longer, not do that last increase, or maybe even some decreases in Q1. That would be very interesting.
I think they're looking at my end of the year prediction as an indicator as to where to move rates to.
That's really what it is. They just listened to Jack back in December of last year and were like, yeah, that sounds good. Let's do that.
It's almost December this year, Ray.
That's true. We have a fun prediction show this year. All right. So what happens when the mortgage rate drops a little bit? Demand goes skyrocketing. Mortgage demand climbs to the highest level in 5 weeks after interest rates move lower. This report's from CNBC. Current homeowners and potential home buyers are responding to lower mortgage rates, albeit slowly. Mortgage demand rose 2.8% last week compared with the previous week, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association seasonally adjusted index. Although Treasury rates dipped midweek, mortgage rates were still a little changed on the average. That's Joel Kahn, Mortgage Bankers Association Vice President, Deputy Chief Economist. Applications to refi a loan increased 2%, and were 7% higher than the same week a year ago. Applications for a mortgage to purchase increased 3% from the previous week and were 12% lower than the same week a year ago. And the same week a year ago, rates were not low. So both purchase and refinance applications increased to the highest weekly pace in 5 weeks, but remain very low levels. Despite the recent downward trend, mortgage rates at current levels are still challenging for many prospective home buyers and homeowners. I would say that's what we're seeing too. Matt Lamar says, "Con." Matt said, "We voted on Clubhouse to bring transitions back. It helps me know when to interject." I'm going to do something, but it was a little loud. I went back and I never re-listened to the show, to be honest, because I was here the first time. And I did go back and listen to some of the shows, and it was a bit ear piercing if you had in headphones. But yeah, I'm going to do, there's 2 transitions I want to do. I want to do a transition from industry tea to the headlines. And then I want to do some headline transitions just so it's easy for people to find it. It's much easier for my assistant to find the transition on the stories, because she has to watch the whole show. So everyone feel bad for her. Okay, so for the thumbnail today, let me put this up there so you guys can see it. For the audio listeners, the thumbnail is a picture of an older couple standing in a kitchen with a handful of money and a worrisome face, handing it towards me. And then I'm on the edge of the screen with my hand up on my face, kind of also worrisome. So there's the thumbnail for those of you who missed it. And this thumbnail came from this article that says, to buy a house in today's market, more and more people turn to an alternative lender, their parents. What? So fewer people can afford to buy a house these days. On top of soaring home prices, 30-year fixed rates have been hovering near the highest level more than 2 decades. Quote, U.S. home prices are near record highs. Mortgage rates have rocketed to the lowest levels since 2000. For today's would-be home buyers, times are decidedly tough. They face limited choices and an affordability squeeze. So buyers are turning to mom and dad. First-time buyers cobble together down payment sources from at least 2 places, Zillow's chief economist Skylar Olson recently said on CNBC's Last Call. Some of that is hard-won savings. I guess it means like you work hard and you save money. Maybe not so many lattes. The other part is a gift from family and friends. Roughly 40% tap the bank of mom and dad. That's up 1/3 from the pre-pandy Zillow found. That's a pretty privileged network, Olson added. Would-be home buyers need a salary of $114,627 to afford a median-priced house in the U.S. Wow. According to another report by Real Estate Redfin, particularly high bar for those just starting out. To bridge the gap, a growing number of younger house hunters are now considered Nepo home buyers, family money to complete the purchase. Nearly 40% of recent home buyers under the age of 30 used either cash gift from a family member or an inheritance to afford a down payment. Interesting. We have seen an increase. Like we were just at a buyer consult yesterday, and they're super excited to buy. They do want to wait till the beginning of the year, despite our advice. It's fine. It's fine. Lots happening November, December. But they said our parents are really in for us to also find this house and are going to be willing to help, whether or not it's maybe a gift fund or co-signing a loan in order for them to get a lower rate and get in the home. Over the past 35 years, payment to income ratio, a commonly used measure, a share of the median income it takes to make a monthly principal and interest payment on a median home with a 30-year fixed mortgage and 20% down, has averaged less than 25%, according from data from ICE Mortgage Technology. I did see a recent report that said incomes this year have increased 22% or something, which was one of the higher increases in recent history. Keep in mind that many lenders have specific loan options like FHA mortgages don't necessarily require large down payments. That's true. And also keep in mind that if you are watching this because you happened upon this news story or news article because you're thinking about using gift funds, you need to tell your lender right away. Because if those funds are already sitting in your account, if they haven't been seasoned properly, there's all kinds of stuff that could happen. So just talk to your lender and make sure they know you're receiving gift funds. I've had a couple of closings in the past that got delayed because on the day of closing, the chunk of money they brought was nowhere to be found in their bank account. They said, wait. Where'd this come from? And they said, Mom and Dad. I said, no, you can't do it like that. We got to track it. So yeah, very interesting. Let me get to some of the comments. What's up? Hola. Rebecca, are you...
Ray,
Rebecca, are you really... Wait,
second.
Rebecca says she's new to this podcast. Or I'm on Clubhouse too. Yeah. Rebecca, is this your first time watching the show? I feel like because you're in the masterminds and stuff, you should know about this. Yes, we are also live in Clubhouse, which was that you, Matt LaMarche?
It was, yeah.
There you go. Matt LaMarche is joining us live from Clubhouse. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, yeah. So are those baby boomers that are giving their kids the money? Is that the demographic? Did they say?
They said the kids are under 30. Okay. So maybe baby boomers and Gen Xers.
Got it.
I think they would probably have a kid that's in the 20s.
Yeah, that's pretty closely related to the meme that I'm sure you've seen about the baby boomers that have the $1 million house that they got for 7 raspberries. So they have all the money and they're just passing it down to their kids.
Yeah, generational wealth.
Interesting. Through real estate. Interesting.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. They're helping them buy. Yeah, they bought a home for 2 pence back in 1982. And when which is really funny because people always talk about there's a really funny back and forth about these 2 boomers that are doing a podcast, and the guys are actually younger, wearing gray wigs, and they're like, I just don't understand. I mean, it's very easy in this economy to figure out how to make wealth. What you need to do is buy a home 30 years ago. It's hilarious to hear them talk about it, saying how easy it was for the boomers. But at the time, there were a lot of them that it wasn't that easy for. My parents were some of them. So my parents for many years had to rent, and they didn't buy a home until they built. Well, I think they had houses, but not while I was born. They built their dream home when I left the house. So those who are lucky enough to participate in the generational wealth, which is what we want to do. I mean, I want to buy real estate now for my kids so that when they go to college, there's a rental income coming in to help pay for stuff. And if they decide to live in that home, they have a home to live in. But, that takes a lot of trust, I guess, in what the economy is going to do. But throughout history, real estate has only lost money. I think it was 1 10-year period, and that was in the crash of 08, 09. So throughout history, real estate long-term has always made money. But you got to be willing to buy it. Rebecca, I see that you found us in the Clubhouse. Everyone can see that you're both in both now. So thanks for joining. Oh, she said she's been on Facebook for the show, but she's on YouTube and now she's on Clubhouse. You're making the rounds. I love it. Welcome to the show.
We call that Lamarching it, actually.
Yeah, that's true. all we need you to do now, Rebecca, is also join on LinkedIn and Twitter so we get the full view counts everywhere. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. That's all the news stories I have. Next week, I'm trying to do a special for you. So I got some feedback. Last week I said, should I do this? And I got so many people DMing me saying, yes, do that. So next week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to record finding all the news articles. I'll probably do this on Tuesday, so it's at least relevant news for the week. So I'm going to record how I find all the news articles, what resources I go to, the rundown that I create on the back end. And then I'll publish that. So you'll see the news articles. You'll see what I would have covered had I done a live show. But you'll get kind of a peek behind the scenes as to how we do it. Now, just so you know, on a holiday week, it's generally a very slow news week in real estate. So I say that now. There's so many lawsuits. Who knows what it's going to be? But so there's probably not going to be as many stories as there would be this week to cover or even to show you where I get them. But you'll see me go to a news source and fail to find something probably next week. You'll see that a lot. You'll see the news sources we go to, why we pick what we pick and why we don't pick some others. So there's some news sources that are blackballed from our show because of their, not their opinion. It's just how they, I guess how they interject bias into every news story. And we don't use.
Is this like a day in the life?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't quite take a day to do the show, but yes, it'll be a peek behind the scenes at what we do to put on the show and how we do it. And I'll be sharing my screen and showing you all that stuff.
I think it's Susie Orman, one of those sources that you don't use, right?
Yeah. Orman. And even though I agreed with one of Grant Cardone's most recent videos about real estate agency, I don't use his predictions a lot because the ones that are all like hellfire and brimstone all the time, it's hard to use it because it never comes true. Even though everyone on YouTube wants to hear about it, it doesn't come true. And then there's a couple of, like, I'll tell you, Business Insider is one that we don't use because of how the articles are written. It's very gotcha styled and they're very biased on their take about things. So we don't use Business Insider at all. But there's a couple others we'll bring up as well. But thank you guys for joining us.
And seeing how you're not going to be here next week and we're going to get this peek behind the scenes. Thanks for everything that you do. I know that everybody's grateful to have you.
I'm happy to. I appreciate it, Jack. Thank you guys for joining the show. Thanks for joining us on Clubhouse too. And if you want to know where to go download the show, you can just go to iTunes and search for This Week in Real Estate. You'll see my face. And when you do, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and do all the subscribey things. Hit the bell, subscribe so that you can be alerted whenever we go live. And I won't see you next week. Like I said, it was a pre-recorded show, but I will see you the week after.